How many people will suffer before we learn to control our #1 drug habit? It kills thousands. It ruins marriages. It's a major health problem. It's the cause of 80% of all murders. It destroys reality. It turns pleasure into pain. It is the irresponsible use of alcohol. Alcohol is a part of everything we do today. Not just an American problem, but all around the world. Dr. Peter Bourne, Vice Chairman of the President's Committee on Alcohol and Drug Abuse in Washington, describes the problems.
Yes, alcoholism is a very major problem in the United States right now and getting larger. We estimate that there are as many as 9 million alcoholics in the country. In addition, there are several million other people that we consider to be heavy social drinkers who may be heading into alcoholism. We also feel that for every alcoholic, there are 4 or 5 other people whose lives that person touches, so that we have maybe 40 or 50 million people in the country who in some way are involved with the problem of alcoholism. Recent studies also suggest that half of the 50,000 fatal automobile accidents in the country each year involve alcohol being in the body of one or both of the drivers. Half of the people serving time for felony convictions in California turns out to have a history of problem drinking. And also in a recent study of homicides throughout the country, it's been found that more than half of the people involved, either the victim or the perpetrator of the homicide, had a significant level of alcohol in his body at the time the event occurred and may, in fact, also have been drunk when the death occurred.
And the type of crime that tends to occur as a result of alcohol does tend to be the violent crime. Mm-hmm. I did a study of 30 cases, non-selected cases, that is all kinds of crime, you know, and less than half of them were alcohol related, whereas 80% of the murders were alcohol related.
Violent crimes, the subject of so much talk lately, linked strongly with alcohol.
I looked up the last 20 murders that I have been involved in, that is, the courts have asked me to see the accused. Mm-hmm. And in 16 of them, 80%, the accused was actually drunk at the time the alleged murder occurred.
Well, in Canada, we would have approximately 600,000 people who drink hazardous amounts of alcoholic beverages. By hazardous amounts, we mean amounts that if people continue to consume at that level, that they run a very high risk in time of developing social, mental, physical, and economic problems associated with their drinking. About 40%, that number of people would be people who are alcoholics, people who have clearly developed alcohol-related problems. So that in terms of the number of people who are personally afflicted, the number would be fairly high. And of course, alcoholics are typically employed. They also have families, so that the number of people who are indirectly, but nonetheless very intimately affected by alcoholism numbers many times that.
One of the most visible effects of this can be seen in the number of automobile accidents that occur as a result of drinking and driving.
Approximately half of fatal automobile accidents do involve the use of alcoholic beverages by at least one of the drivers in that collision. So in that kind of area, I think it certainly is alarming. The other place, too, is that many of the consequences of alcoholism tend to be quite chronic and tend to be long-term rather than acute. But one of the things that happens is that it results in sizable health care costs. And as we find ourselves in a situation where the government now is finding it harder and harder to meet this level of health care costs, the sizable contribution in these health care costs that relate to alcohol, that stem from alcohol-related problems, is becoming a tremendous burden on the whole society.
Along with being a major problem, Alcohol is costing hundreds of millions of dollars all through North America. Scott Henders, an occupational alcoholism consultant, talks about the costs.
Recent research throughout North America now has indicated that there's a distinct parallel between the deteriorating work performance on the job and alcoholism. In other words, 60% of the poor work performance possibly is caused from alcoholism. This means, of course, that if management people, if union people, and if supervisors can form a team to instruct certain people in the organization to observe poor work performance, then there's a better than 50-50 chance that when they come across an employee who is suffering from poor work performance, that person is alcoholic.
Industry leaders tell us that poor performance is just a part of the cost. It takes a big investment in years and dollars to train people for special jobs. So when a key employee develops a drinking problem, the thousands of dollars invested in him can be lost. How has the alcohol problem been allowed to grow to these proportions? Perhaps the answer to that lies in the liberalization of the laws concerning alcohol, a process that seemed to take place all over the Western world during the last 15 or 20 years.
During this period, many changes were made, including lowering the drinking age. More and different kinds of alcoholic beverages were allowed to be served in more and different kinds of places, all with the aim, I believe, of trying to take away the forbidden fruit aspect of drinking, with the ultimate aim of trying to reduce some of the problems that we have in our society with alcohol.
In trying to come to terms with the alcohol problem, it's important to see why people use it. And according to Morris Lazecki, a guidance counselor with the Regina Board of Education, face certain realities.
The basic problem is people, not alcohol, not drugs. It's people learning to live together, learning to live with themselves. Most people are pleasure seekers. And we, each in our lives, search for more ease than dis-ease. And alcohol, drugs, give us pleasure. Consequently, society uses them. As a result, in education, we have to keep that reality in mind.
And it helps, too, to know how this drug affects people.
Alcohol is an anesthetic, very much like ether. And the larger the amount you have in your system, the more of your brain cells are out of function. And you know, first of all, you become less tactful. You're not as polite. You don't observe the niceties. You might tell a story in company that you wouldn't otherwise tell that story in. And as the anesthetic effect on your brain becomes more pronounced, that intellectual control that we all exercise over our forbidden impulses is lost. So that we can insult people, we can attack people, we can become angry with people, we can do all sorts of things which we would never do if we hadn't taken alcohol.
It must be remembered here that the situation we're faced with is not so much alcohol use as it is alcohol misuse. Problems with alcohol usually begin when a person feels less than his best, when his needs are frustrated, or he hasn't reached the high goal he's set for himself.
Even the people who successfully achieve turn to alcohol as a way of relieving the stress that they're subjected to. It not only sometimes works effectively for them initially in doing that, but we have incorporated that as a value identified and linked with success in our society. The successful businessman is perceived as having a martini or a highball at the end of the day, almost as a mark of his success. We take it for granted that businessmen will drink over lunch. And we just see that this not only is an accepted part of the lifestyle, but is accepted as a way of dealing with the pressures and stresses and frustrations that successful people are expected to be exposed to.
People drink for the same reason many young people take drugs,
Drugs don't have in them any magic. There is nothing in a drug that can make people do what they cannot actually do. Young people going to a dance sometimes feel they have to have a drink. But in talking to young people, you simply ask a question, is there a dancing lesson in the bottom of a beer bottle? And they have to admit that there really isn't, that actually they had that skill before they had the drink.
The thing is that people need to have as many ups as they have downs. If all we're giving them is downs, they may have to look for those good feelings in a bottle.
If my parents, my friends have sort of taught me that I'm a no-good, rotten kid, I will tend to act like that. If people have never loved me, I will tend to feel that I'm not lovable. Now, when this happens, I begin to wear a mask. With an adolescent, it might be the tough guy mask, that I wear a big leather jacket and I drive a big motorcycle. But it's just a mask. It's so that you don't really see how weak and afraid I am. Or it can be the nice guy mask, that I smile at everyone until I can get you in a back alley and then watch out. There are as many masks as Halloween masks, but what is really critical is that a person has to wear a mask, because behind the mask, I'm a very lonesome person.
When people drink to compensate for any lack they feel inside themselves, this is called drinking to cope, or solution drinking. And it seems as though our present lifestyle has done a lot to stimulate this practice.
We feel that breakdown in the traditional family, migration of people from more stable rural areas into the urban situation, where life is difficult and frustrating and often very depressing.
That when people start using alcohol as a way of relieving stress in their lives, they ought to put the brakes on, or there could be even bigger problems ahead. What separates the social drinker from the person who has a drinking problem? Once a person is no longer able to drink without causing problems to himself and others, there's usually a lot of fence mending to be done. Dr. Saul Cohen, Director of Rehabilitation Work, tells what they do.
Our general philosophy in rehabilitation is to provide a comprehensive program for the person who has an alcohol problem, who's reaching out for help. In this way, we have to develop a community response to that person's problem. We have to call upon all available agencies in each small community. Usually this is somebody who is a representative or a member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
The old connotation of, the old idea of what an alcoholic looked like is, the thing that comes to mind with the average person in our society is that, the skid row bum, the derelict, that type of person. We're looking now at the fact that only 5% of people are the skid row bum alcoholic, and the other 95%, or 19 out of 20 alcoholics are people like you and I and the rest of us. We try and bring about some understanding and learning about what alcoholism is, what the difference is between a social drinker and a heavy drinker and an alcoholic drinker. We discuss the drug alcohol, for instance, We conduct learning, or attempt to conduct learning, in the area of affective learning.
So it's not just one person left by himself or herself to cope with the problem. True, this is often a slow process, one that involves physical fitness and lifestyle programs, and a getting to know yourself period at a place like the Calder Rehabilitation Center.
Now, when the client comes into the Calder Center, he undergoes a 4-week intensive course, usually along with his wife, that involves counseling, it involves films, it involves talks. The counseling may be on a one-to-one basis, or it may be in sort of a group, as a sort of a form of group therapy. Now, at the hospital level, a person with an alcohol problem may not be that ill that he has to be admitted to hospital for a liver or a coexistent problem or pneumonia, or the taking of multiple pills adding to his alcohol problem. He may not require a hospital bed. Indeed, we're finding that over 95% of the people who do come in looking for help for their alcohol problem can be helped in a detox program where really non-professional help will be all that's necessary. So in the detox house, we have recovered alcoholics, and we have other people who are interested in alcoholism who will keep an eye on this person for 4 to 7 days, assess his problems, his various economic, physical, mental problems he may have generally, and at the end of that time, they provide direction for him. This particular unit is again a stepping stone house for an individual who is dislocated from his family. He can move into this from 1 to 6 months to a year.
On one thing, all the experts agree. Rehabilitation is something that needs to be done for those who already have the problem. But our one big hope lies not in treatment, but in trying to head this problem off at the pass.
We aren't going to solve the problem of alcoholism, just as we've never solved any other health or social problems by treating it away. Effective means of intervening with these kinds of problems have to do what is called prevention or primary prevention.
It was in this belief that the government of Saskatchewan decided to try and do something about alcohol abuse, and AWARE, the world's first alcohol education program, was born. The people of Saskatchewan were literally surrounded by an advertising campaign aimed at making them aware. This program attacked the problem from several areas of concern.
We looked at alcohol as a drug. One of the things that surprisingly few people knew was that alcohol is a drug. So we created messages which specifically were aimed at that. We also looked at the area of drinking and driving. Many campaigns have been tried to which attack this problem. Very few have had any measurable results. And we've also looked at alcohol in the workplace, alcohol as it relates to younger drinkers. We've looked at what we have termed negative patterns. These are patterns of drinking which, when taken to an extreme, can become very dangerous for the person. The person can become addicted and get into serious problems, and so we've tried to alert people before this happens. We've attacked several of these major areas, and at the same time as attacking these, we have been doing evaluation studies to try to monitor the success of our campaign.
But the media campaign of advertising is just one part of the AWARE program. In their desire to work with people on a community level and assess some of the local needs, AWARE, in cooperation with the Alcoholism Commission for Saskatchewan, brought together people from all over the province to study the problem, along with an awareness program to encourage self-restraint among the people. Some experts favor social control measures as well.
Two kinds of things would be most effective. First, the establishment of a policy that treats the pricing of alcoholic beverages as a public health matter, one that ties the cost of alcoholic beverages to the standard of living, so that as the general standard of living goes up, as inflation goes up, the price of alcoholic beverages would also go up. When the legal drinking age was reduced from 21 to 19 or 18, it's clearly resulted in higher rates of alcohol-related collisions among young people. In some places, many dozens of people would not have died if the drinking age had not been lowered from, say, 21 to 18.
We feel that the AWARE program has created a receptive climate to this kind of legislative or structural change in the way we approach liquor policies. And we feel that it not only can change attitudes, but it can set the scene for other kinds of activities and changes, which can have a positive impact on people's drinking behavior.
As for other social controls, most people close to the problem created by alcohol are all for taking a tougher stand with the drinking driver.
I think that we need to get a lot tougher with our laws. I think we need to say you can drink or you can drive, but you can't do both at the same time, and if you do, we're going to make it very tough on you. I think we need to educate people more about the dangers of drinking and driving. In Scandinavia, they have very strict laws. They put people in jail, so people just don't drink and drive, and it has enormously reduced their casualty rate. I think also one of the things that's being looked at in a number of communities is for the community to provide free taxi service after a certain hour at night. so that anybody who is drunk, who has misjudged or drunk too much, can get home free with somebody else driving.
Every government, perhaps all over the world, is schizophrenic about alcohol. It's against the law to drive under the influence of alcohol, yet every bar and every beer parlor has a parking lot. That's just craziness. I think it mightn't be a bad idea if we put a breathalyzer at the exit of every bar and liquor store parking lot and test them. And I suppose it's dramatic. But my chance of being murdered are very, very small. My chance of being killed on the highway by a drunken driver is very, very high. And I'm just as dead being killed in an automobile accident as I am by murder.
Alcohol does more than affect the superficial things in our way of life. It gets inside us, affecting the way we think and behave. Perhaps, as some of the experts suggest, social controls are not the only answer. Perhaps we have to look for the solution inside ourselves. One strong advocate of alternatives to alcohol is Rabbi Steinberg.
My essential position is that it's possible to achieve naturally, that is, without any kind of an external agent, any kind of a condition that can be produced by an external agent, such as alcohol. And that if people can be taught or exposed or trained to use methods, techniques, activities, whatever they happen to be, to give them the same kind of satisfactions and fill the same kinds of needs that alcohol does, then I think we're taking really a very positive step in the right direction. There are, of course, a number of different kinds of techniques for reducing stress and tension. The more common one, of course, you can reduce it by simply going out and jogging. That's one way of getting rid of tension, or taking up a martial art such as judo or karate or kung fu. For people that are not athletically interested and are more sedentary in their reception, then we can go into different kinds of stress-reducing techniques involving concentration approaches. Generally speaking, when people are approached with a stress-reducing technique and they actually experience that they feel much better, that the tensions have been reduced, then they say, gee, you know, it might be worthwhile pursuing.
Of course, building the best kind of preventative work possible is building the right kind of environment for children to grow up in.
I think of beginning as early as premarital and prenatal classes, where you're helping to teach parents how to parent, so that when their children are growing up, you are fostering a healthy family structure. So one of the things that we have learned from a number of studies is that a good, healthy, positive family environment goes a long ways to alleviating drug abuse problems.
Seeing alcohol problems through Rabbi Steinberg's eyes, maybe what we ought to be looking at is a whole new alternative lifestyle. And there's more we can do to prevent people from drinking as an escape mechanism, too.
I think also we need to provide for those people who have a variety of emotional problems adequate services so that they can turn somewhere else other than to alcohol as a way of relieving their emotional anguish or psychic discomfort. A lot of people who have chronic depression don't know where to go, or there is no place for them to go, and to go to the local bar and to turn to alcohol looks to them to be a solution to their problems when really it isn't. And if we were better able to provide more comprehensive mental health services, I think this would help enormously in this area.
Scott Henders says he personally would welcome help from police, people trained in the social field, and ministers and social workers who are trained to deal with alcoholism in the family.
There's no way that we can completely solve this problem as an agency of the government. But when you harness, when you look at the possibility of harnessing the whole community, it has tremendous potential. Training police people in the social field, training ministers and social workers to deal with the alcoholism in the family.
So far, humanity has proven that it doesn't get along without, or can't get along without. So the next best thing to strive for is responsible use. And just because it can be abused, it doesn't necessarily prove that it's bad. Mm-hmm. You see, eating 6 times more food than you need isn't doing you any good either. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make food a bad thing which should be abolished.
the people that are responsible are not the governments and not the experts. They are the people that live right next door. They are you, whoever. And as long as I know that there's a core of people working in the same goal, that's pretty good backup. I think we are maturing as a society, and if we can start trusting each other, we'll get there.